I want to talk about celebrating your uniqueness, because we are all unique, but there are certain barriers to that which, if not all of us, then many of us come across. And the main one, certainly the main one for me, has always been comparing myself to others. We either place people above us or below us. Essentially, that's usually one of the outcomes of comparing ourselves to each other. We either say, "Oh, I'm better than him," or "I'm worse than him." But actually, what we're talking about tonight is saying it doesn't matter. You're both unique. You both have something to offer, and what this work is all about is just finding out what that is. And part of celebrating your uniqueness, who you are, is accepting who you are as well. Now, acceptance is not just a passively accepting and not doing anything about it. We're talking about accepting the way things are and still doing something about it. I watched an episode of MasterChef Australia yesterday, and I've seen a few of these, and something happened last night which happens every now and again. They're all under pressure to produce. You know, they're down to the final however many, so there's even more pressure than normal, and they never really have much time, and the quality that they have to produce is so high that they don't really have an opportunity to mess things up. There is no room for mistakes. So what happened last night, one woman pulled her things out of the oven and it had all gone wrong. So she had a little meltdown, and one of the judges came along and said, "Listen, you know, pull yourself together. You've still got 15 minutes. You're a brilliant chef. Do something." And within a minute, she was back on track, and she did really well. But it's that level of acceptance. Okay, this has gone wrong. This is how it is right now. There's nothing I can do about that, but I can still work to produce something wonderful. So as far as we're concerned, when we're looking at ourselves, if you bring some acceptance into it all, there's relief.
Then you can move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's far too easy and far too common for people to say, "I don't like this about myself," and then get down about it, especially when you're looking at the media or you're just looking at other people and saying, they seem happier, they seem more successful, they seem richer, they seem more popular than me. And then that downward spiral just increases and it gets worse and worse. Yeah. When actually you can say, okay, this is how it is at the moment, but it doesn't always have to be this way. You've got time to sort something out. The chef last night, she had 15 minutes, but we've got 15 years, say, to sort things out. Or 2 years. Now, in the example I've given, and I'm going to give another example of my own as well, it took somebody else to say, listen, this is how it is, move on, you're good enough. But we can also say that to ourselves. And that's part of the whole celebrating your uniqueness. That's understanding, accepting the stuff that we need to work on, but also understanding that there's a bag full of stuff that we're good at. And one of the other things that we do to ourselves is we assume that because something is relatively easy for us, everybody else must be able to do it. You know, somebody will say, "Oh, you're good at this." You know, I've always been good at that. Everybody can do that. No, not everybody can do that. You can do it. Don't know why, don't know how, but you can. Maybe you've always been able to do it. Maybe you've worked hard at it. But it's not something that everybody can do. So there's an appreciation of our abilities. There's an acceptance of the things that we perhaps would like to change. But in that acceptance, there's relief, there's some clarity, and there's an ability to move on and do something about it. Rather than just going, "Oh, I'm rubbish, therefore everybody else is just going to walk all over me because I'm not as good as them." So it's a minefield sometimes, but there's a way through, and there are certain tools that we can use, there are certain procedures that we can put in place, even if it just comes down to talking to ourselves. I've mentioned it before, and it sounds crazy when you think, why would you talk to yourself? People will think you're mad. But it overrides those little voices in your head. If you're using your actual voice, that's louder than the little ones in your head, and it's the little ones in your head that say, you're no good. I was off to an appointment yesterday, and it was cold, it was raining, I was waiting for a bus, and it's very easy in those kind of circumstances for me to think, this is not going to be, why am I doing this? It's not going to go anywhere. And I could feel myself just being pulled down by my own internal dialogue. Now I know enough to be able to say, okay, well, if I can do that to myself, I can also lift myself up. So pretend that this is going to be the best meeting you've ever been to. Pretend that something great is going to come out of this. Whether it does or not, it doesn't matter. But it makes my wait for the bus so much more enjoyable. I'm not bothered by the wind, I'm not bothered by the rain. I've got a smile on my face. Maybe one of the other people in the queue sees my smile and thinks, it is a good day. And he starts smiling. Who knows? But if we're all in our own heads, letting ourselves be dragged down by those little voices, we're not going to get anywhere. And all it takes is for us to celebrate how awesome we are from time to time. Now, that in itself brings a slight issue, because we need to be careful not to get cocky, not to get too arrogant about how good we are. But that's a balance that we can find. Get the pendulum moving, first of all, at least, and then you'll find out if you're being too arrogant or not. And there's also the flip side of the arrogance, which my teacher used to call inverted arrogance, which is the person who says, not so much, I'm awesome, look at me, how great I am, but I'm no good, I'm rubbish, I'm worthless. Now you'd think that's nothing to do with arrogance at all, but they're two sides of the same coin. Whether you say you're great, and you pump out your chest and you almost show off to people, which can be off-putting, it's the same if you say, I'm no good, I'm worthless, you can't help me. That's so annoying in people. Now, the problem there is, and we will have discussed this in the past as well, that's the victim-rescuer dynamic. So anybody who says, I'm no good, has a chance of triggering in people around them, or at least one person, that need to rescue, and then they come in and say, don't be like that. You're good at this, you're good at that. And if you understand that that whole dynamic is just set up in order to garner attention, then you know that it's not going to go anywhere. When somebody says, I'm no good, ideally, you'd want to be able to say, do you want to be any good? Do you want to sort that out? And that usually will catch them out, because they're used to people going, don't be like that. Come here, I'll help you, you'll do. But if you say to them, do you want to sort that out? Do you want to be good? If they say yes, you're in. You can talk to them, you can work with them, because they genuinely are seeking to sort it out. But I would imagine that a majority of people would say, what? Do I want to sort what out? Yeah, you can't help me. I'm no good, remember? I'm worthless. It can sometimes take hard work and commitment and time to get yourself into a situation where you've got that level of confidence that you can sustain it for a longer period of time. I mean, my girlfriend, she used to correct me when I'd say, I'm an idiot, or whatever, and look at this, dropped it again, and what a fool. And she would say, no, that's not a self-supportive statement. And she'd be in there straight away, to the point where after a year or so, I'm saying it to myself. I'm saying it to other people. And that's all it takes. You know, we talked about the fact that if somebody else is doing it for you, giving you a little pep talk, why can't you do that for yourself? And again, do it out loud. Karaj, he used to do it. And I said last week, I used to hear him say things like to himself, just, in fact, coming back from Edinburgh, 2 days later, again, we took another 8 hours to get home, and he came round the final corner towards his house, and he said, right, Karaj, calm down now, you're nearly there. Because it's very easy at the end of something to lose focus and think, oh, I'm nearly there, and that's when the accident occurs. You've been on the road for 8 hours, and you turn the corner into a familiar road, and all of a sudden you're relaxing, thinking, I'll have the kettle on, and I'll have a biscuit, and boom, you hit a tree, or you back into something, or whatever. So he would talk to himself. Like I said last week, I've heard him say to himself, just get this done, Karaj, and you can have an ice cream. Right. Who are you talking to? Me. What's it to you? I'm just asking. Seems a bit strange. No, I have to talk to myself. Otherwise I get too excited, or I get too annoyed, or whatever it is. And it's amazing. I don't do it enough. I wish I did it more, and it's something that I need to practice. It's so simple. It's such a simple technique, and yet we don't do it. And if we did do it, well, you do. Yeah. And it's incredibly effective, isn't it? It reminds me, or makes me think now, because I talk about the power of writing, and I know somebody who when she learnt to read, dashed home, and what would she have been, 4 or 5, I don't know, dashed home to teach her younger siblings, because for her this entire world had opened up to her. It was like magic, and to this day she'll read anything, and she's a quick reader. So reading, writing, and now we're talking about talking. These 3 things make such a difference to our lives, and they don't cost anything. They're so easy to use, so easy to practice, and have such a beneficial effect on who we are. This is what we're talking about tonight, is give yourself the approval. Celebrate your uniqueness.
Absolutely.
Work on it if you can't. Even though I can look at somebody and think they're happier than me, they're more successful than me, I don't know their struggles. And we talked last week about suffering and the part suffering plays in our personal development. I don't know their suffering. I don't know their history. I don't know what's going through their mind or what they're carrying in their heart. I couldn't possibly know. I could ask them. But what are they going to tell me? Are they going to tell me the complete truth? Can they tell me their complete truth in words? A lot of the things that we experience can't be communicated. As huge as our vocabulary is, it's still limited when it comes to being able to explain the nuances of our life, of our existence. And the only thing we need to compare, as it says here, is us with ourselves. How was I a year ago? One of the explanations as to why we look at just that top layer and why we look at status and possessions and wealth so readily is because they're easy to compare. Mm-hmm. So if I've got €1 million and you've got 2 million, it's very easy for everybody to say, oh, you're richer than me. And there we can draw conclusions about maybe you're probably more successful, more clever, more entrepreneur, whatever. So there's an immediate facilitation of that comparison process. Now, the other stuff that makes up who we are, that's a bit more difficult to grab onto, but it's so much more important. And it's that stuff when we're looking at celebrating our uniqueness, That's the depth we need to go into. Because the surface level stuff, like we've discussed before, is meaningless when you compare it to the depth of who we are, what goes on below the surface. Now the paradox is that the deeper you go, the more you find you connect with other people. So your uniqueness is not unique at all, because if we assume that we're all connected, then at that very, very deep, basic level, we're all the same. And the further you go to the surface, the more uniqueness you find, the more we are different to each other. And that allows us to see that separation. And that separation allows us to compare. But at the fundamental level, we're all the same. We're all connected.
The core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those things that we all share, those are the important things. All the other stuff, the stuff we use to compare, that's nearer the surface. And the nearer the surface you get, the less meaning it has. I'm probably biased because it all comes down to this stuff for me. For personal development is at the very heart of this work is shedding the conditioning that you've picked up along the way. So when we come into this world, we're never more pure as far as beings are concerned than when we arrive. And as soon as we arrive, the people who take care of us start to educate us and shape us and condition us in order that we can live in this world. So dance the dance of the particular culture you're born into. Now, hopefully you get to an age where you realize that this has happened, and you realize that the stuff that you're carrying around with you is not yours at all. It's your parents' stuff, or your family's stuff, or your culture's stuff. I moved to Germany and I was amazed that the Germans weren't as proud to be German as the English are to be English. I'd grown up on this island where everybody's proud of their country, more or less. But in another culture that's not the case. Oh, right. So you start questioning things. Now, if you're lucky, you question things early enough where you can start to shed things. And I think having children possibly aids that process, because you start to see yourself being mirrored in your children, and you also start to see your own parents coming through you as you parent those children. So again, there's an opportunity for the wake-up call. And if people just understand that who they think they are is not who they are truly, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, then there's huge benefit for the entire species. Because as soon as you strip away that surface level of conditioning, then if you're committed to that whole process, you're going to go deeper and deeper. And the deeper you go, the more beauty you find, the more power you find, the more simplicity you find, and the more connection you discover with every single living being, not just humans, but everything on the planet, and in the entire solar system, and in the universe, and any other universes that exist. So all of a sudden, just by dealing with that surface level stuff that we carry with us, we're traveling to the depths of who we are, and we're seeing a much bigger picture than the shiny stuff that is on offer, that the world tells us we should strive for in order that we can rise up above other people and be top of the tree. It's not all about being the best or the top. It's about understanding that we're all connected. And that's only possible, as far as I'm concerned, by addressing, or at least the easiest way to see all of this is by addressing who we are. Same way we've said I can't compare myself with another person because I can't possibly know who they are fully. Why try and change somebody else? Why try and change 7.5 billion people when I can work on myself? If I don't like the reality that I'm looking at, then all I need to do is change the way I look at it. I can't change that reality because of this, what did you call it? The communal mindset? Collective, yeah. So because of this collective mindset, the power of all the other 7.5 billion people that are on this planet, I'm almost powerless to do anything about it. All I can do is change my own mindset. Look at myself. There's plenty of work to be done here. Because by the time I realized, when I got working with this guy, I was 31 years old. So there's 31 years of conditioning that I need to sort out. Not all of it is necessarily bad, but I need to sort through it all to decide what to keep, what to throw away, like we've discussed before. So I need to work. Now, I just thought it was 31 years at the time, and then I realized after a conversation with Courage, it goes back generations. We're talking about me carrying my grandparents' stuff with me, their parents, and if you're talking about my culture, being an Englishman, all my ancestors, that whole cultural heritage I'm carrying with me. And to be able to get rid of that and just drop that, the relief that comes with that, and moving to a different country helps, because I can see more clearly where I've come from. I can look back at that island and look at what they're doing to themselves, and there too, you can't see the wood for the trees when you're there. I mean, we're looking at, as Europeans, at England, the UK, but England really, and thinking, are they crazy? Who knows? Tomorrow we may be doing the same thing with the US. But when you get away from the source of that conditioning, whether it be your family or your culture, it's a lot easier to identify. And when you start, just like I say, shedding it, you realize, actually, I'm not losing my identity, because a lot of people hang on to that far too fiercely because they think that's who they are. But actually, if you let it go, you discover that there's still a whole lot left. And the stuff that's left is more beautiful, more powerful, and more free than the stuff you've been hanging on to. And if we could all do that kind of thing and then discover that we're all connected, then we wouldn't be doing the things to each other that we're doing, we wouldn't be doing things to the planet that we're doing. Everything would be a lot. I read an article by a woman who said she happened to have these prescription drugs from I think a painful episode she'd had. And she'd read something about the fact that they make you work harder, and some students are using them to work harder. So she thought, I've got some left, I'll take one and get some work done. And it was a nightmare for her. She did get lots of work done, but it didn't do her any good. And at one point she realized, or she thought to herself, hold on a minute, me and all these students, we're taking prescription drugs so we could get more work done? Really? That's the world we live in? We should be doing less. We don't need to work that hard. I wrote to a friend who commented on last week's video, and I said to him, yeah, it's becoming more and more clear to me just how distracted we are by the stuff that's on offer, and how we are constantly trying to progress down certain pathways which offer us things that are nowhere near the kind of beauty and power that we all have inside of us. So if we can discover more of that, that would make a huge change to everything. That's what I think we should do. That's what I think we should be doing. And we are doing it. It's perhaps not going as quickly as some of us would like, but that's the nature of the game, really. All we can do is look at ourselves. And going back to the subject of tonight, if we can celebrate how wonderful and how beautiful we are as individuals, that's a huge start. Because if I can see my uniqueness and celebrate that, I can see yours and yours and yours and yours. And if you're doing the same thing and you can see my beauty, that's better than the competition that we've talked about, or the comparisons that we've talked about. That's the essence of it, really. And it starts with the individual. But that doesn't mean to say that we're separate from each other. We're not. We're connected. And this work is so much more powerful when it's done together. Courage used to say, you can't do this work on your own. It's too tough. You need people around you. You need people just to pick you up when you're struggling, to remind you why you started, to show you their progress so that you can be inspired rather than get jealous. Do it together. Does that make sense?